Peter King from Sports Illustrated, senior writer there. The mmqb.com is the website. And Pete joining us now. You're looking at your phone. What are you looking at?
I just posted Monday Morning Quarterback about 15 minutes ago, so I always like to see the different precincts reporting, see what they're saying.
What's the immediate reaction? What are people jumping on?
Well, I wrote a lot about my dog that died. We had to put our dog to sleep last Thursday. And right in the middle of all the Incognito stuff. And I ended up I had to carry my dog down 2nd Avenue in New York, my 72-pound golden retriever, to the vet. And, just a pretty heavy day. But the last time we had a dog that died, it was such a wrenching experience that I ended up writing it as the lead to my column, which in the middle of football season kind of got me ripped quite a bit. But I don't know. I mean, you have a dog, you just it controls your life in so many ways. And so Bailey is gone, and I just wrote a tribute to her in the column today.
I remember my brother telling me that he had to put his dog to sleep. And here he is taking the dog, walking the dog, and the dog doesn't know where the dog is going. Like,
of course.
He's
walking him to the gas chamber.
He goes, I felt so terrible because she was happy to go for a walk, even though she's dying of cancer. And so I can certainly
You know
understand.
what? But for people get a kick out of this in some ways, I would not have this dog if it were not for Daniel Snyder. You'll have to read that and find out. And the guy who, if I had just hesitated just a little bit, a Hall of Fame football player would have owned Bailey, my golden retriever. So those are a couple of pretty good teases, aren't they?
All right.
You're actually going to have to read it.
The mmqb.com. All right, let me start with the Saints here because I thought it was fascinating to see them at home. And Tony Dungy and I have talked about this. The race for home field advantage in the NFC. We know how Seattle is at home. They've proven that they can win on the road, a little bit better than last year. But the Saints at home, I don't know if there's a better team in their building, the ambiance surround, everything that goes on and how they play than the Saints are.
Well, nobody has a bigger home field advantage, in my opinion, than Seattle because, Seattle has played a year and 2/3 without losing at home, and obviously this is a totally different Saints team from the team last year. But I agree with you. Those are the two teams. Everybody else is mortal in their own home. But these two teams, if New Orleans has home field advantage, I think New Orleans going to the Super Bowl. If Seattle has home field advantage, I think they're going to the Super Bowl. And Dan, in the next 28 days, San Francisco plays New Orleans and Seattle. In the next 28 days, New Orleans plays San Francisco and Seattle. So in the next 28 days, Seattle plays New Orleans and San Francisco. They have a round-robin tournament in the next 4 weeks, and that's going to tell the tale.
The Dallas situation is interesting because I look at Jason.
Is it ever uninteresting in Dallas? No. It's always interesting.
But I'm looking at the situation here, and you got to, view it from 1,000 feet above and say, all right, why would you continue to keep that coaching staff? Jason Garrett, I think, is 2 games over 500 for his career. Defense hasn't been great. You got Monty Kiffin, Bill Callahan, offensive coordinator. In all facets, you look around and say, who survives this?
Well, I'll just say one thing about, and not that this is going to help Jason Garrett at the end of the year, but last night you could just see this coming. It was a train wreck. As soon as Sean Lee goes down, just think, you're playing without the guys at the beginning of this year who clearly, without any question, were your 2 best defensive tackles. Jay Ratliff, who basically talked and yelled his way off the team with help from Jerry Jones, and now Jason Hatcher, who is a top 5 NFL defensive tackle, and he's missing because he's got a stinger. Then Sean Lee goes down with the hamstring. So, look, I congratulate, and actually I named him one of my players of the week. I congratulate Mark Ingram for running for 145 yards. It's unbelievable. 30 games in the NFL, that's his first game, first 100-yard game. Isn't that incredible for a guy you pick in the first round as a running back?
But is it his fault or the style of that team?
He's been hurt the whole time. I think he's injury prone. Or well, whatever that term is. We used to say Phil Simms was injury prone, and then he played, 150 games in a row or whatever it was. I'm exaggerating, but he played a lot in a row.
Well, you can talk about Dallas's defense. What about Dallas's offense?
Well, they're totally incapable yesterday of keeping the defense out of trouble. So that is bad. That says bad things about both the design and the play of those guys. And, there's something weird going on with Dez Bryant. I mean, I'm not saying that Dez Bryant, the last 3 games, Calvin Johnson has had 49 passes thrown to him. Now, I don't know what it is with Dez Bryant, but it's a lot less than that. I don't know what the deal is, whether he's not getting open. You'd really need to watch the coach's tape to understand what the deal is. But, there's some disconnect between Romo and Dez Bryant that I don't get.
Well, there's single coverage on Calvin Johnson yesterday by the Bears twice.
Well, that's because the Bears really trust Charles Tillman so much. And obviously, at this point, you all the time have to keep a safety over the top of Calvin Johnson. It's got to be mandatory for anybody who plays him. This guy, what an incredible – yesterday was his 100th game. You realize he now holds the NFL record for average yards in a game, for a receiver. And I don't know, Dan. I watch him. There's so many great receivers now. Andre Johnson played great yesterday. Yeah. Golden Tate, I thought, was phenomenal yesterday when he had to be. Made a great catch in the corner of the end zone. There's so many good receivers, but nobody's better than Calvin Johnson.
Peter King joining us in the Man Cave in New York City. Before I get to the Richie Incognito interview with Jay Glazer, Peyton Manning yesterday got banged around a little bit. You got the game against the Chiefs coming up. If you're kind of handicapping the Broncos here, Manning's having maybe the MVP season.
I think they're the best team right now.
In all of football?
In all of football right now. As a matter of fact, I changed them. I had Kansas City #1 for probably a month or so. But I changed it because, I looked a lot at Kansas City's offense over the last 3-4 weeks. And, they're just not generating enough offense. They've got 3 touchdown drives in their last 30 possessions. And so, offensive touchdown drives. And so I put Denver there, but every single team up there really is flawed. And, you really try not to make 1 week mean so much. But after you watch Carolina, for instance, go into San Francisco and do that, after you watch Seattle finally put a complete game together, it's hard. It's always a strange league, but I think this year it's especially strange.
And Peyton's been roughed up this year.
He got roughed up
yesterday.
He's really gotten beat up this year. And I thought it was interesting. I didn't know he had an MRI however many weeks ago until he said that yesterday. And clearly you can just tell. You can tell the way he's walking. At the end of that game, you could tell that this guy, I bet his legs were encased in ice on that trip on the way back to Denver, And, he is the MVP so far and threatening to have the best single season a quarterback ever had. The question is, can he make it through the last 7 weeks, All
right, the Richie Incognito interview. There's a lot of different angles here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not looking at Glazer, and going to.
I thought Jay did a good job. I honestly did. I know he's gotten some criticism, but I'm telling you how tough it would be to be in that chair with everybody shooting at you. And look, Jay is different because Jay is in business with some of these guys. He trains these guys. So it's a different world. But what he did is right up front. He said, "Hey, listen, I have a relationship with Richie Incognito. I formerly trained him in MMA." So he said it right up front. And look, if you're Jay Glazer, you're going to turn down this interview because some people are going to view you as having a conflict of interest? Of course you're not.
No. As long as you're asking the questions that warrant being asked. But
Right.
what did you want to know that you did not find out yesterday?
Well, I really want to see if he asked him on camera, and I don't know if he did. I want to see if he asked him on camera, did the coaches tell you to toughen this guy up? And if
he
so,
wasn't
what did
allowed
you do?
to.
Okay, well,
I'm right there with you.
I think that I think if we were in the middle of negotiating for that interview, I would have said, and I don't know what Jay said because I haven't talked to him, but what I would have said was, I at least have to ask you this question, and you have to no comment me. If you want to no comment me, that's fine, but I have to ask you that question.
Yeah.
Because it's one of 2 or 3 questions that you must know when you come out of that interview. If he's not willing to say it, that's fine. But I need to know that.
I said the same thing when I started the show, that you must ask it, even if he says, look, I can't comment on it, then you've given me an answer that at least placates those people that I'm asking the question. As far as anything else there's something missing here, Pete. I don't get 1,100
You know what happened, Dan?
text messages.
Dan, I think, I remember the day Reggie Bush was drafted by the New Orleans Saints. This was in the early days of rampant text messaging. And I went with a Saints PR person out to the airport to pick him up. And I sat in the car and interviewed him on the way from the airport in New Orleans through storm-ravaged New Orleans back to the Saints facility. And, he had his head buried in his phone for the majority of the time. And we talked a little bit, but he was just I said, boy, explain this whole texting thing. And he goes, hey, it's so easy because let's say you don't want to talk to somebody. You can send them a text. So it's like you're communicating with them, but you don't have to spend 5 minutes with them on the phone. It's over in a few seconds. And I just think, I look at my daughters, I mean, they're 30 and 27 now, but they live through texting. That's...
But 1,100?
1,100 in 19 months. Let's just say that. What is that? That's since they've known each other. That's 70 texts a month. That's 2 a day. Big deal.
Wow.
It seems like a lot, but how do you know that maybe one of the things that Incognito does, because he's on this leadership committee, maybe he's just sending mass texts to everybody in his offensive line group. Hey, guys, we're meeting here. Well, I don't know.
How do you think Incognito came off yesterday?
I thought it could have been a little better, but I was impressed that he manned up and he said, I'm ashamed because I look, I do look like a racist. I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember the quote. But basically he said, I'm ashamed because I look like a racist. And I'm not. Well, if you're white and you call a black person a half N-word, in my opinion, that is an absolute showstopper. You can't do that. I don't care who's kidding who. And I blame, Shannon Sharp said it on CBS yesterday eloquently. That cannot happen in American society, which is basically what he said. I think that is absolutely ridiculous. And any players on the Miami Dolphins who say, oh, that's cool, he's funny, he's a good guy. I mean, think of what you're doing. How would your parents and your grandparents feel about that with a white guy calling an African-American player a half N-word? How would they feel? And I think it's shameful. But I do think he started on the road to sort of football and human being rehab.
But this is what I wanted to know, and I wanted Glazer to press him. This is your buddy. This is the guy you got his back. You text him all the time. Your friends, you spoke to him after he checked out of the Dolphins facility. How do you not know what's going on?
How do you not see this
that
coming?
Make any sense. This is if you
how do you not see this coming?
Your best friend. How do you not?
Well, I don't know
that
he called him his best friend, but he called
on the team. He said he was my best friend on the team or best friends on the team.
Yeah,
but you don't
clearly
know about this.
He was Incognito thought that they had a relationship that they didn't, and I'm not saying that Jonathan Martin. I think he hid a lot of this, because it sort of reminds me of the stories you hear of these battered wives who basically say, hey, as long as I say everything's okay, maybe, the bad stuff isn't going to happen again. That's what this reminds me of, this relationship of, a guy who's just trying to fend off the latest thing just by laughing it off. So then it'll go away, because I think it'll be very interesting to see when Jonathan Martin meets with the league investigator. I think what he's going to say, Dan, is, I thought by going along with everything that it was going to disappear. Eventually, I'm in my second year in the league. Why is it still happening? I don't know how to fight it. I'm not going to physically fight a guy, but I think he just tried to go along with it to make it go away.
The website's themmqb.com.
The Dan Patrick Show, weekday mornings on Audience.